Welcome to the MicroLife Café. I'm your host, Sarah from MicroLife Fertilizers. We're talking all things organic horticulture and beyond, so pull up a chair and pour up a cup with us. Today I'm sitting down with someone who knows Texas gardening better than just about anyone, Jay White, owner of Texas Gardener magazine. We will be talking about the magazine that's been a go-to resource for Texas gardeners for decades, diving into what's growing this spring, and exploring how the books we read can genuinely change the way we relate to our gardens. Let's dig into it. Jay, thank you so much for coming in. Welcome. For listeners who aren't familiar with you, can you share with the audience who you are and how you got involved with Texas Gardener magazine?
Hey, Sarah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. And thanks for asking about how we got involved with Texas Gardener. I mean, for those people that don't know, Texas Gardener is in his 45th year, but Sally and I have not had it that long. We've actually been with it for 8 years. And the way that we came to own Texas Gardener was before we bought it. I actually wrote for Texas Gardener for 8 years before that. So we've been involved with the magazine for 16 years, but we've only been owners of it for 8. And the way we got there is, so my sweet wife, Sally, when I have a degree in agriculture, but unfortunately, I got my first degree in agriculture the year that Texas had its first big oil bust, and I graduated with a degree in agronomy, and absolutely no one would give me a job.
Wow.
And so I wound up in the United States Air Force, where they made me a computer officer, and so I spent my whole life doing IT stuff. I mean, I'm actually retired from the MD Anderson Cancer Center here in Houston as an IT guy.
Wow.
But Sally and I bought a weekend place in Brenham about 20 years ago. And when I got there, Sally said, "You always wanted to go to A&M." She said, we're 40 miles away. You need to go to A&M. And so I applied. I got in. And, you know, things are very different when you become a graduate student at 48 as opposed to becoming one at 22.
Yeah.
And so I made very good friends with a lot of the faculty there. And in fact, probably the reason I went was a lot of your listeners will know who Dr. Bill Welch was. And he was my mentor. He's probably the most knowledgeable guy about Southern horticulture and Southern horticultural history in the country. And so he encouraged me to come. I wound up with a graduate advisor, Charlie Hall, who's the leading economist in the green industry in the whole United States.
Wow.
And so it was very cool to be working around all these people that were leaders in the industry and kind of have them mentoring me. And while I was there, Dr. Welch's assistant, her name was Cynthia Mueller, she was his editor on all the books that he wrote and everything. She encouraged me to write, and she's the one that put me in touch with Texas Gardener. I started writing for the magazine, and now, 16 years later, Sally and I are still at it.
That is so exciting. And I really love your history. I think it's never a bad time to get back into school if you want to get a master's or anything. So I think that's really awesome. So talking more about the magazine itself, how do you decide which topics make the cut for each issue?
So when you sent me this question, I kind of had to smile at it because it actually makes it sound like we're a bunch of creatives or whatever, but we're not. I mean, the magazine really is highly structured and highly planned out. And so I think one thing that really helps me is I have a core group of writers that have been with the magazine for 20, 30, 35 years. And so what's good about that is we can all work very well together. We all understand the seasonality. We know the kind of things that our audience kind of responds to. But also it makes it a challenge to come up with how to produce, you know, something new and relevant and everything once you've been doing this for as long as we have. But I really do have a great team, and I really do think that's why Texas Gardener magazine is still here. I mean, like I say, 45 years, that's a long run. I mean, we're one of the oldest gardening magazines in the country.
Wow.
And so we're pretty proud of that. But it's all those writers.
Texas has a wide, diverse range of climates and growing zones, from piney woods to the desert. How do you create content that speaks to gardeners across such a large state?
Well, the good news is for when people think of gardening, primarily people tend to think about three things. They think about flowers, vegetables, and lawns.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the big things. I mean, when I was at A&M, there was a little joke among the extension agents and everything, and they said it doesn't matter how many horticultural degrees that you have. If you can't answer somebody's questions about trees, turf, or tomatoes, they're not going to think you know what you're talking about. And so it doesn't matter if you're in South Texas. It doesn't matter if you're in West Texas. It doesn't matter where you are. You want to grow tomatoes, you want to grow turf, and you care about your trees. Trees are the things that we care the most about because they have the biggest dollar value. But the good news is the vast majority of our customers come from what they call that Dallas, San Antonio, Houston triangle.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the people in that area, they have, except for the people in the hill country, they have decent soil, and we've all got the same client. But the good news is about gardeners and people that are excited and care about this hobby is they're willing to go out and buy the soil amendments and the things to build their soil. They're also will go out and spend money on putting on an irrigation system and things like that. And so that's how we can give gardening advice to a huge swath of Texas, is understand that even though, the hill country has very alkaline soils, East Texas has very acidic soils, North Texas has very basic soils, most people that are gardening, and that's what our magazine is for the home gardener, they're gardening in raised beds, or they're gardening in beds that they have highly amended with organic matter and all of that. And so it makes the tips and the information that we give very applicable to a very large section of Texas. You just might have to do something 2 weeks earlier in South Texas than you do in the DFW area.
Oh, yeah. That's so cool. So let's talk about spring. What are the top 3 things Texas gardeners should be doing right now that'll help with a successful growing season?
So the thing that I've really been fired up about over the last 3 or 4 years is the way our climate is changing. We're seeing earlier warm up in the spring, so we're having an earlier growing season. And in Texas, I tell people, as banal as this sounds, really the secret to being a great gardener in Texas is being a great manager, okay? And in Texas, we are always managing against 2 things. We're managing against too much hot and then massive short periods of cold, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so this climate change stuff is really kind of affecting how we garden.
Yeah.
And so I'm telling people, it gets so hot now. 2 summers ago, I don't know if you remember this, but we had the earliest 100-degree temperatures in Texas that we'd ever had.
Oh, yeah.
And that was in early June, 100 degrees, okay? That's brutal, okay? So most of the plants that we grow, especially if you're a flower grower or a vegetable grower, they're annuals. And since they're an annual, you can count down from when you plant that seed or when you plant that transplant to how many days that thing's going to need to produce fruit for you.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter if it's green beans, doesn't matter if it's tomatoes, asparagus, whatever. It's going to have a number of days that it needs to produce. And I tell people, you need to figure out when your colds really happen, your extreme colds happen in the spring. And you need to plant as early as you can plant. I mean, I read a great blog article from the Houston Botanical Garden, and they argued that while everybody says there are 4 growing seasons in Texas, they said there's really 5. And if you want to be successful, you need to know what that 5th one is and take advantage of it. And what we're calling the 5th one is what we call Spring 1. And so Spring 1 happens the day after your last frost. Now, the problem is you don't really ever know when that last frost is.
True.
But if you want to give that plant the best opportunity to thrive, you want to get it in the ground when stress is going to be the most low. And I tell people, us and plants are a lot more alike than we like to realize.
Mm-hmm.
But plants want to grow their plant babies in an environment that is as low stress as possible. And in Texas, the only way you can get that low stress, get those seeds, get those transplants in as early as possible. Then if you're going to have an unusual late season freeze like we almost did today, I mean, today is Happy St. Patty's Day when we're recording this on March 17th, and at my house it got 33 degrees. So I'd already had my tomatoes in the ground for 3 weeks, but I just went out and covered them up. They're going to be okay. I protected them because what I'm trying to avoid is I'm trying to avoid those 100-degree days that are coming now in June, early
Yeah.
June and all of that. Because with tomatoes, you have things like they will stop producing pollen, or the pollen that they have will shatter once it starts staying over 92 degrees in the day and over 80
Oh.
degrees at night. And so because of that, that's why you've got to get tomato transplants out as early as possible. I
Mm-hmm.
got mine out around Valentine's Day, February 15th. And now I'll get tomatoes for as long as heat doesn't blow up on us and shut them down. But things like green beans that have a shorter time, cucumbers, things like that, it's the same deal. You want to get these things in early, get them growing up and all when the weather is favorable,
Mm-hmm.
when there's plenty of moisture coming. I mean, in Texas, that's subjective of what plenty of moisture is.
Yeah.
But we'll get more rain in the spring than we will in the summer. So get those things early. The water's high, and even the bugs and the weed pressure are somewhat down. And they'll stay less of a problem the earlier that you plant. So the other two things that I have, improve the soil, improve the soil, improve the soil. My
Mm-hmm.
biggest little saying that I say is that good gardeners grow plants, great gardeners grow soil microbes. And so I believe that with all my heart, okay? Skip Richter, he's the editor of our magazine. One of his little saying is, before you plant a $10 plant, spend $100 on your soil.
Yeah.
And I 100% believe that. If you have happy, healthy soil, you're going to use less water. You're going to have less pest problems from funguses, bacteria, diseases, because the good stuff in the soil will kind of take care of those and keep that under check. And you'll even have less pressure from weed problems and things like that. So build that soil, plant early, build that soil. And then the other thing I tell people is your plants are hungry, feed them. Nobody wants to get fed 3 times a year.
Right.
Nobody wants to get fed that way. So especially if you're going to grow flowers and vegetables, things that you want to harvest and have great, healthy, nutritious, flavorful vegetables, I recommend feeding those with like a liquid fertilizer every 2 to 3 weeks. And if you're uncomfortable with putting that out, I tell people use organics. I don't care what you find that you like. And some people say, well, that's still a lot of fertilizer. Well, cut it in half. It's a liquid fertilizer. Mix it at half the rate, water in with that, and I promise you, if you want to be a great gardener and you want your garden to look like they look on TV and all of that, you feed those plants on a regular basis. They'll get big. They'll put on big, beautiful, healthy produce. And especially if you're planting early and all, you're going to have incredible harvest, be it flowers or vegetables.
Oh, yeah. And I think that that's an ongoing joke I see around the internet is people always saying, oh, I want to start growing a $3 tomato is way too much. I spent $30 on this tomato. I think the part that people are missing from that, with all of the supplies and all of the things they had to buy, is just whenever you do take care of that soil health, you're going to have less issues later down on the line where you don't have to transplant things as often because you're taking care of the whole environment that the plant is in itself. So moving on, you are quite the reader, and you shared a couple of books that you have been enjoying. Earlier, you were talking about Flower Confidential by Amy Stewart is a book that influenced you. What surprised you most about what goes on behind the scenes of the floral industry, and how did it change the way you think about growing flowers?
So for those of y'all that don't know, Flower Confidential, outstanding book that kind of talks about how the floral industry, the cut flower industry, works globally, not just in the U.S. And the subtitle of the book is The Good, the Bad, and the Beautiful in the Business of Flowers. And so when you ask me how it changed me, 2 or 3 things really made a big impact on me. And part of it was because of a bunch of people that I met while I was at A&M that I thought were doing great, cool things even before I read this book. And that's the Arnoskis out in Blanco, Texas. And they were one of the first people to put in a field cut flower farm in the United States in decades. And the reason that is that many years ago, 90% of the cut flowers consumed in the United States were grown in the United States. Then, back in the 70s, 2 graduate students at the University of Colorado wrote a thesis, and they said, Colombia would be a perfect place to grow flowers because it's right on the equator, the weather is constant, year-round, the soil is good and everything. We should try to grow cut flowers over there. And they did, and they were incredibly successful, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger throughout the years. And before long, I mean, not before long, but over the course of a couple of decades, now the ratio of the flowers consumed based on where they come from has shifted. So used to, 90% that were consumed here were grown here, 10% were imported. Now, 90% of the flowers that are consumed in the United States are grown overseas, and they're shipped in. And why that bothered me a little bit is because Colombia might be a great place to grow flowers. There's no doubt about it. It's much better than South Texas to grow flowers, okay? But every one of those flowers, a flower is a living thing, and as soon as you cut it, it starts to die.
Yeah.
And so to get those flowers to market, they've had to do incredible breeding, and that breeding has bled out some of the things like smell and things like that, but it's increased shelf life. So they cut these flowers, they cut them in tight bud, they stuff them into cardboard boxes, put them into air-conditioned trucks, drive them to the airport in Bogota, they put them on an air-conditioned airplane, and then they fly those flowers from Colombia to Florida, different distribution centers in Florida, and then grocery store chains and floral distribution centers and all will send diesel-consuming 18-wheelers with cold storage all the way down to Florida to pick up those flowers, to turn around and bring them back to their grocery stores in Georgia and Alabama and Oklahoma and Texas and California. And so when I read that, it was just like, I was like, man, what a huge ecological impact this really a small industry has on our planet, And the other thing that really kind of troubled me is when you grow in, Latin America and all, they don't have worker protections and all like we do here in the U.S. And so those flowers are grown with every chemical, herbicide, fungicide, that you can imagine.
Yuck.
And the workers are not always given the best, PPE, protective equipment and everything to do it. So those people get exposed to a lot more toxins than they would being grown here in the United States. So basically, all of that just bothered me. And then I knew people like the Arnoskis and several other of these flower farmers that were trying to bring that back.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got excited about it. And one of our daughters became a floral designer for one of these people that were not only growing their flowers, but then they were very specific, and they would only, if you came to them as with a wedding and you said, hey, I want you to do my wedding, they would only do your wedding with locally grown flowers, with flowers that were grown and sourced within a 100-mile radius. And another friend of ours, Deborah Prenzing, started that movement. That's called the Slow Flowers movement. And it's just something that resonated with me because as a gardener, I realized I can grow those flowers.
Yeah.
And just FYI, kind of a little, fun daddy thing here or whatever. But when two of our daughters got married, Sally and I got to grow the flower, at least part of the flowers for two of our daughters' weddings.
Yeah.
And then our friends, did the arrangements and all. So that was a very cool thing that our little passion for locally grown flowers allowed us to do.
That's a really nice personal touch. And, I just got married last year, and florals are very expensive. And I did talk to a florist once, and they told me exactly word for word what you said. Oh, they fly in, they refrigerate them. It's costly not only for our wallet, but for the environment, all that gas that is used to transport them in plane and train and automobile and everywhere. So I think more people growing locally could be hugely beneficial for the planet, and you can do really beautiful personal touches like you were describing for weddings. And also it's just really nice to show local flowers. I think that especially in Texas, I've never lived somewhere that has more beautiful native flowers, and you can really just go through the Lady Bird Johnson website and find so many fun ideas for the garden and flowers that are great for the type of soil you have as well. Do you think gardeners today are starting to look at plants as more living systems we have a relationship with rather than just things we have to manage?
So I think so. And I think one thing that kind of, every once in a while we get new buzzwords in the industry or whatever.
Yeah.
but one of the buzzwords that's out right now is mycorrhizal fungi. And the fact that this is something that everybody wants to have in their product or whatever, the only reason they're putting that on their packaging that says this thing contains mycorrhizal fungi is because the consumer has become educated that this mycorrhizal fungi serves many, many purposes in, if you want to call it, the soil ecosystem or whatever. And so I don't know how I feel about saying plants communicate, or they may communicate, but they don't do it in the same way that we do. And people are beginning to understand that these fungal networks are, if plants are communicating, they're communicating through these fungal networks. And on top of that, you were talking about how there are always trees and there are always plants that can survive in a drought. And a lot of that is also accomplished by fungal organisms that work to basically extend the root system of a plant. And to do that, they can reach further down into the soil than maybe the plants could to reach that moisture or whatever. So yes, I do think people are thinking of plants and their gardens more as with a more holistic approach, So they are looking at things like fungi and how that helps them. We've all heard the story that if emerald ash borers attack one side of an elm forest or an ash forest, that ash tree will start exuding some chemical markers that will get into that fungal network, and it will spread through that fungal network, and it'll be picked up on the trees on the other side of the forest, and it will trigger to them start producing whatever these exudites are that discourage the emerald ash borer from coming and attacking you. So in that effect, we do understand that everything that grows in the soil is somehow connected, either by its root system, either by these fungal networks and everything, or the microbes, the biology, the viruses, the bacteria, all of that are going in there and working together. So I do think more and more people are thinking of plants that way.
Yeah, I think so too. And so if you could add one underappreciated Texas native to every garden, what native plant would you pick and why?
So that's very hard because there are so many very good plants, really, really good plants, okay? But everybody has a different aesthetic. And so some of these plants that are very, very good plants, I mean, I've got an American century plant at my house, but not everybody wants a giant agave, sticking out by their front porch. I tell this to people. It doesn't matter what your gardening style is. You really need to look into native plants first, because there's going to be something native in Texas that's going to fit that design element. Okay?
Yeah, I think so.
And so there's so many things. Just the other day, we were in Wimberley. We were walking with my grandkids out by this lake. All of a sudden, I smelled this little honey smell. It's agurita. Do you know agurita?
Nope.
So agurita, it's a plant primarily calciferous soils of Texas, hill country and all of that, but kind of a holly-like plant. It has spiky green waxy leaves, but right now it's covered in these beautiful yellow berries, but the flowers smell just like honey. They smell just like honey. I mean, it's just amazing.
Wow.
And that's a native plant, and it looks like holly, and it smells like honey, and you can make jelly out of the berries and all. So there's one. But then you've got the agaves and the sodals. And I'll tell you, here's a bulletproof plant. This plant always amazes me. We've never covered it up.
What's that?
A sago palm. Okay?
Oh, okay.
I've got a sago palm in a pot. I never water it. It's gone down to 5 degrees at my house. It stayed at under freezing for 50-something hours back during Snowmageddon. And this thing comes back every year, But I'm just not a palm guy. Somebody gave it to me, I put it in, and I can't kill the thing.
Yeah.
So I just think you should investigate natives. We're finding more and more natives use less water, which is becoming more and more important here. And they all have natural pest resistance. I don't care what your native plant is, it's not going to get eaten up by pests.
Yeah.
Because through the hundreds of thousands of years that they've evolved, they've learned how to live, and coexist with the insects and all that are here. So I won't pick a single native, but I will tell people always investigate natives. Oh, and 2 things. This is a very good thing. To save water, always call your city, okay? Your city council. And so there are many cities right now that are encouraging people. They will literally give you $200, $400, $500 gift coupons to go to local nurseries and buy native plants.
Are you serious?
Yes. I mean, right here in the Woodlands. John Ferguson, that recently passed away, he worked this program. One of the people that worked up this program in the Woodlands. SAWS in the San Antonio area, San Antonio water system. They will literally give you coupons to take to a nursery, buy $200, $300, $400 worth of native plants, and replace your water-thirsty non-native plants.
That's incredible.
It is. It's a great, great program out there.
Oh, yeah.
Two little things to save money that people don't know that. Always call that. Always call your water board or whatever. Say, do we have rebates on native plants? And then also look into water capture cisterns. In the state of Texas, you can get a tax exemption for any money that you spend on installing a cistern or a water collection system.
Really?
Really.
I had no idea.
And it doesn't have to be any time of the year. It's just a form that you have to get from the comptroller. You fill it out. You take it in to wherever you buy your cistern or your piping or whatever. Tax-free.
That's incredible.
Yep.
That is some really good information I don't hear anybody talking about. Well, Jay, thank you so much. I feel like we've all learned a lot today. Where can people find you online if you want to give a little plug for your social media, website, you know the game?
So very simple, texasgardener.com. Please check us out there. We've got a lot more than products to sell out there, so go and kind of poke around. We've got educational stuff out there and all as well. I will do one quick plug. Texas Gardener's been around a long time. We started a digital archive 12 and a half years ago. And so if you like the computer, if you like being on the computer, consider our digital subscription. It's the cheapest subscription we have, and it gives you a 12 and a half year searchable archive.
Wow.
So you can find everything we've written in the last 12 years on tomatoes, hornworms, squash bugs, whatever, okay? So that's really a great resource. The other thing that I will tell you, please follow our social media. So you can find us at Texas Gardener Magazine on both Instagram and Facebook, and we put stuff out daily, okay? We put out daily tips. We give information about great gardening events, because I tell people one of the great things to me about gardening is how social it is.
Oh, yeah.
And that's one of the things that makes us love gardening is we get together with fellow gardeners. We get to talk about what we've killed or what we can't kill. And so follow us there. We also have a newsletter on our website, and sign up for that because it has 2 calendars in it. And one of the calendars tells you when all the Master Gardener meetings are, the American Rose Society meetings are, things like that that are regularly scheduled throughout the state. But it will also have a calendar that's going to tell you when Azalea Festival is in Texas, or when the Blueberry Festival is in Nacogdoches, or when the Poppies Festival is in Castroville. So anyway, sign up for our newsletter. Go to our website, and please follow us online at Texas Gardener Magazine.
Thanks, Jay.